Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be running through all the books that I've DNF'd for 2023 and also all the books I have given 5 stars. I've actually not counted how many I've got of each category, but I don't think that there's gonna be that many because I rarely give out 5 stars, and I DNF'd a lot of books towards the start of the year, but usually I DNF a book maybe once every couple months, so it shouldn't be that long, but we will see. I'm gonna probably keep like the descriptions brief as to like what they're all about, but if you really want like an in-depth review, usually they are found on my Goodreads, so if you do want to, shameless plug, go follow me on there. You can keep up to date with all my reviews and you'll be the first to get updated on there because I update my Goodreads like it's like a status thing. I don't know, I'm just constantly updating it. Going through my DNFs, we're gonna start back all the way in January. Was the first DNF that I have, and this was Destroy Me by Michelle Heard. I don't know, when I started reading it I only got to 40% in, and I just think it was very insta-lovey. When they did meet, basically like the next time they saw each other they were confessing their love for each other. That was already at like the 40% mark, so I was like, I don't really know. I thought this was meant to be like enemies to lovers, they hate each other sort of vibes, and I was not feeling it, and the writing was just like pretty average on my end. It wasn't sticking out to me, I wasn't in love with it, so I just DNF'd it at 40%. So this must have been around the time that I must have been like in a mafia space, because I've got another mafia book here which is Cold-Hearted Bastard by Jenica Snow, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and I DNF'd it at about 50%. I started this book and I just never went back. That was when I decided that I'm just going to take it off my shelf and DNF it, because it obviously did not interest me. Must have read that 50% in one sitting and then just was like, I'm picking up another book, and then I'm picking up another book, and then just kept going and going and going, and I just never went back to it. So I was like, do you know what, that's sort of like what I maybe need to do with Buckled by Pam Godwin. I have been reading this for probably 6 months, but I feel like I love Pam Godwin so much that I just can't let it go, but I might have to DNF by the end of the year. If I don't finish it before the end of 2023, I will DNF at the 1st of January 2024, I promise you. But yes, that's basically what happened with Cold-Hearted Bastards. I don't know, this is where I think I started phasing out of my Mafia phase. I just was not ever vibing with those books anymore. I don't know, they just came very repetitive. Arranged marriage, or you know, she was like the head mafia daughter and now she's also then, I just felt like I just was having the same storyline over and over again and just reading the same spicy books with the same spicy tropes, and it was just like I felt like I would get one good book in about 10 or 15. I got into reading books again, so I usually go through like phases of like reading mafia, then I'll go through and then I'll go to fantasy, and then I'll go into like poly relationships, and like I don't know, I just have like that addictive personality where I'll just like read the same thing over and over again till I get sick of it. I started reading a lot of at the start of February, but I just went through Instagram and TikTok and found heaps of recommendations, started reading them, and a lot of them were just really terrible. So I'm going to go through all of these because they were all within like a few days of each other. So I did have Iris by Eden Finley. I got up to 15% and I just could not get into it. This was like an army based, yeah, so it was like a black ops and like the soldier type vibes, and I don't know, maybe it's like an American thing. I just don't really like care so much about like the soldiers and the black ops stuff, so I was just like, they were like on missions and things, and I was like, I don't really care about this. So that was like a DNF. I should have read like the description a bit more. I remember this one. So the next one was Try by Ella Frank, and I didn't realize that all of her books are in third person, and at this time I was very against third person. I don't know why. Now it's all I read. Like fantasy books, third person is like the way to go, because you don't need to know like what's going on in like someone's head so much. Like when it's in fantasy, like you need to know like the world building and like I don't know, it's just easier to understand. Back then, I don't know, when I was reading third person for a romance book where you want to read like the inner thoughts and like the process of like them falling, they didn't have that, and I couldn't connect. I got up to 60%. It was a short book, but it still was just like I didn't care. I was getting confused because it was romance and it kept referring to like both of them as he, and I was just like, wait, which one was this again? And I was just getting confused. Like it wasn't very distinctive in like who the characters were. It wasn't working in my brain. Maybe I just wasn't smart enough to understand who was who. Hostelle by Nicole Dykes. This I got into 50%. I just felt like it was very childish, and that was like my main point. Like I did not like the characters. They were very base level. There was no real depth to them. I didn't know like their values, their wants, their needs, like what they want in life, and like I didn't have anything to base off with them, so I was just like reading and not caring. But I DNF'd so many books in February. I was ruthless. Here is another book in February. This is The End. Black Ties and White Lies by Kate Singleton. I got up to 15%. Ex's older brother romance. And like, what I found so weird about this book, I clearly remember reading this and being like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what is happening right now? I don't understand. So she gets like a job interview for a new job. She gets this new job. She walks in to meet her new boss because she's been called into the office, and then it's the ex's older brother. Obviously, like, we saw it coming, but he's this billionaire and he's like, I need you to fake date me, I need you to be my fiance. Like, I feel like there was like a scene where he started just making really like sexual comments towards her already, and we were 10% into the book, and I'm like this is meant to be a forbidden romance. Like, this is your ex-boyfriend's older brother. Like, you need to build up the tension towards it, and I felt like he was just like right off the bat like, yeah, and I was just like, oh, boring. And then she was giving very pick-me vibes. I could not deal with being inside her head, so yeah, that one had to go in the bin. 15%, that's all I made it. Oh my god, the next one was pick-me vibes too. Kings of Quarantine. I got into my Why Choose at this point, and this was in March. In March, I ended up getting into my Why Choose romance. Concept was great. I think the author wrote this while everyone was in COVID quarantine, and you know, like, the school gets shut down. She's now in this house with like all these guys. No one can leave or come out. They're there. She was just so pick me. I couldn't do it. Every Why Choose book, I just get pick me. I really struggle with it. Like an MMF book, that's like my go-to, an MMF book, because 3 people you can sort of deal with. When there's like 4 dudes and 1 chick, I'm like, this is a bit much. Like, I don't need that many men in my life. Like, dealing with 1 is hard enough. 4 of them? Like, in theory it sounds great, but in reality, like, you know that that's just gonna be like a whole lot of no. At this point, I realized that I was really into like my MMF books. So yeah, I found out my really big deep dives of TikTok. It's called Sharp Love. It was it was about a hairdresser, and I don't know why I started reading this. Stop, I can't. It was about a hairdresser, and these guys would come in and get haircuts from they would get haircuts from her, and they were just obsessed. Oh my god, the writing was terrible. No, you don't understand. It was terrible. The concept was terrible. The writing was terrible. The banter was terrible. Just everything about it was terrible. So that was a big DNF, like, almost immediately. I think I got maybe 3 or 4 chapters in. I was like, this is horrendous. This sounded a whole lot better on TikTok. And then I went pretty good in March. There was only 1 in March. Then I had 1 DNF in April. I'm so sad to say this because the author did send me the second book in the series for free, but I DNF'd her first book. Is it still here? Yeah, I've got Shut Out by Avery Keel, and she sent me it, but I keep putting it off because I did not like the first book. So I ended up DNFing Offside by Avery Keelan because it was just so boring. Like, there was nothing going on. It was just continuous conversations for no point. They'd go to a club, they'd have a conversation. They're at school, or I mean, sorry, not school, they're at college and they're having a conversation, and then now they're somewhere else and they're having a conversation, and I'm like, where's the conflict? Like, what is happening? Like, are they just flirting this whole book? There is no plot driving this book. Anyway, I couldn't do it. 17% is where I got to. Couldn't do it. No, sorry. Then I ended up DNFing Where I Belong by J. Daniels. This one I got to 12%. The writing was very subpar. I did actually get sent this book for free, so I feel terrible, but I've heard that the other books in the rest of the series do get better. It was just this one. I think it's like her first book maybe she's written. I'm not 100% sure, but so she ends up coming home to her hometown, has a one-night stand at a bar, and then goes like the extra drive back to her hometown. So this is like a pit stop on the way just outside of town, and then she gets to town, goes to her best friend's house. The guy who she had the one-night stand with starts walking up towards the pool, and then they both didn't realize that they had slept with her best friend's older brother, which she hadn't seen in like 10 years. I'm like, okay, it's been 10 years. Surely he hadn't changed his facial structure that much. Like, it was really cringe. It was very insta-lovey. I'm not doing it. I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. Tempting Little Thief by Megan Brandy. This was her new release this year. It was like a mafia vibe. I got to 20%. I actually received the ARC for this and I couldn't do it. It was, I don't know, it took me like 4 or 5 days to get 20% in, and I just could not connect with any of the characters. And I just remember her dropping the brand Balenciaga like quite a few times, like straight after the Balenciaga scandal, and I was like, I don't know, I got to 20%. And then I did try Unravel Me by Becca Mack, and she did promote this on all of her socials, so this was definitely a me thing. It was not the author not saying like this trope was in the book. She said that this book was insta love, so anyone who didn't like insta love, like, don't read this book basically. And I was like, I'm just gonna give it a go. Like, I really liked the other 2 books in the series, and I just wanted to see like how she did it. And yeah, I got to 9%, and they were already in love with each other, and I was like, I can't do this. So I was like, that was my mistake. I'm gonna own up to that. That was me. So cut that one off real quick. Caught Stealing by C.E. Ricky. So I had so many things I did not like about this book. I ended up DNFing it at 58%. Firstly, there were small digs at Swifties. Why? I used to love C.E. Ricky's books, but now I'm like, if you're going to be making digs at the Swifties, it felt insta-lovey. Look, this is a very common occurrence with all of my books. I just don't like the insta-lovey trope. I don't know. I can handle it if it's like a slow insta-lovey, like they're not like obsessed with each other within the first 20%, showing interest within like the 30-40%, but then they don't actually confess feelings until like the 60%. I'm okay with that. If it's an insta-lovey where they're confessing feelings like really early on, and then I'm like, nip it in the butt, nip it in the bud. But then it was the blatant lying, Phoenix continuously lying to one of their best friends, Kaysen. I could not deal with that. Oh yeah, and I just felt like the whole thing was very like childish, having like a secret relationship because they didn't like want their best friend to find out. And then some more recent ones. So I did have Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. I got to 45%. I could not deal with the writing. It was very pretentious to me. Didn't like the fantasy world. I didn't care for the characters. Yeah, no for me. And Trouble by Nyla K. I got up to 64%. It literally just couldn't keep my interest. So I don't know. It was kind of like strange. It wasn't really like the Nyla K book thought I was going into. Now let's go through all of my 5-star reads. Now this will be interesting because I actually want to see if I would change my ratings now that I'm like further into the year and like had more time to think about it. So let's go back to January. Okay, so my first 5-star read of the year was If There's a Way, which was the second book in a series which is going to be like a true series, but the first 2 books in the series are almost a duet together. Book 1 was a 4.5, book 2 was a 5 for me. This is an romance. It is extremely dark, extremely toxic, but it does have the childhood friends to lovers. It does have troubled upbringing in relation to like being in a small town, religion, beliefs, and lots of homophobic content. So just like pre-warning for this book, it is not a fluffy love story at all. It is very, very sad, and I did cry so many times throughout this. It is one for the heartstrings. I still think about this book to this day. I still haven't got my books for my trophies on the shelf, so I need to get them because I did read them on Kindle Unlimited. Absolutely love this author's writing. Absolutely adored it. Wouldn't change the reading. So good, so incredible. Oh, I still think about this book. It's just if you know, you know. I've talked about it multiple times on my page, so yeah. And that was in February. So now the next 5-star I didn't get for ages. The next book I did get was in April, and that is The Summer We Fell. 5 stars, Elizabeth O'Rourke, but I would probably drop this down to a 4.5 now. And my reason being is I just haven't really thought about it as much as I have the other books. At the time, it did pull my heartstrings. Honestly, it's a reoccurring thing for all of my 5-star reads. If it made me cry, it's almost a 5-star read. So as much as it was a really good story and like very different, as much as it had like the forbidden aspect and like the plot twist was really great, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, it hasn't been in my mind as much as the others, so I definitely would drop that down to a 4.5. Straight after that, I did actually read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and unfortunately now I don't really promote her work, and I did give it 5 stars at the time, but now I'm going to probably remove my rating and review. I'm just going to mention that, but yeah, I'm just going to nip it in the bud. Then in May, I did read All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I absolutely love this book. I just love it. It was so good. This was a single dad, small town romance. I think that the small world that it was built and created in, that the relationship between like having the teenage son rather than usually what they usually have is like a younger child, was just that extra element of being able to have another relationship dynamic between all of them that we can sort of connect with. It felt like, because he was an older teenager, I don't know, I just really enjoyed he added a lot to the story and I enjoyed that. Tobias was he's like the blueprint of the single dad grumpy single dad that I want. Next was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I've actually not continued with the series. I need to finish it. I've got the second book here and I do need to finish it, but I think I need to read the novella in between because there's new characters that get introduced. 5 stars, loved this book. It was so good, so entertaining. I really enjoyed the vampires, and I still need to pick like the cliffhanger that it left on as well. Like you need to have the second book, and I don't know why I've not continued this. Like I really need to finish this series. But anyway, I would still continue to keep this as a 5-star rating. It's so worth your time, so incredible. I really enjoyed this. Love, 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 love. If you need a romantasy book, read this. The spice is good too, even though it's like very minimal spice, but it's still good spice. Oh my god, I got these 2 books in a row. So firstly, it's Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I adore this book. This is like a book that is embracing imperfections. It is like a romantic comedy. It is between Bo and Win. Win and Bo are expecting a baby after a one-night stand, and I know the pregnancy trope is not for everyone, but please, I swear to you, if you were going to try to read the pregnancy trope, please let it be this one. I was not a pregnancy trope girly, and this completely changed my mind. The way that Win and Bo would communicate, the way that they would deal with the relationship that they're now having to have together because of this child. They were just so sweet and wholesome, but also so funny. Like their banter was so great. I 100% would keep that a 5-star read. I still think about it. I still recommend it. I love it to bits. Oh, so good. And then straight after that, I actually went in to read A Love Letter to Whiskey. Now this is not for everyone. Like check the trigger warnings, because there is major tropes in here that everyone despises. You know what, you just got to go into it thinking of it as more of like, this is a toxic relationship, and you will have the best time but also the worst time. A relationship that spans over like 10-15 years plus. It is every bit toxic, every bit of sad, right person, wrong time. I get stressed thinking about this book. I could not stop reading it. Like it was so toxic but so good. So good, like I was eating it up. Oh, would not change that reading either. Candy Stunner did such a good job with that book. A more recent one I've read was Manacled in September, and I have not been the same since reading this book. No book has compared. I am chasing that same high. The way this author puts words together, a plot together, I can't even describe to you how brilliant her mind is. Like the way you think things are going, they're not going. And then the way she puts words together is just, it's so poetic and beautiful. And as much as this book was so long, you do not feel like you need to reduce it down any further than like what it was, because it was just perfect in every single way. Like I would give this 1,000,000 stars, and yeah, the rating will definitely stay the same. I'm still reading Hermione right now because I just can't, I'm trying to replicate this high. Oh, and if you don't know what Hermione is Draco and Hermione fanfiction for like Harry Potter. Once you start reading this type of fanfiction, you will never go back to a published book because it just does not hit the same. I am forever broken. Like my Kindle library is just Hermione. If you can handle the content warnings, because you will need to check content warnings for this, because it is, let's say Voldemort wins the war meets The Handmaid's Tale. It's an alternate universe and it's fucked. That's all I'm gonna say. You With a View by Jessica Joyce would not change this rating. Still, I believe it's like one of the best romance books of the year. If you love topics of just like road trips with like school rivals to lovers, like they've now grown up, and there's topics of like grief. There's a lot of personal development, personal growth. This story is just like more than just like your typical romance. You just fall in love with both the characters individually, like their families, their relationships, like their work life and how they handle things, and it's just so beautiful. Like even when you're getting to the epilogue, like you want to read every single word of the epilogue, and that hardly ever happens to me because epilogues are boring. But for this book, I didn't want it to end. I wanted to continue reading this, and I made sure I devoured every single word until it finished. Still 5-star read. One of the top romance reads of the year, for sure. Oh, loved it. The Ballad of Never After, which is part of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. It is the second book in the series. First and the last book were not my favorites, but the second book was perfection. I don't know what happened towards the end of the series, but 5 stars still. Continue to think about it still, so it's gotta stay there. Jax will forever still be my favorite, and that ending, I can't. Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This was an arc I received. At the time, I loved it. And I was like, he beats Cade. Cade's now being put into second spot. But now that I'm thinking back and I've seen other people's reviews, and when people start making reviews and you're like, oh, that is a great point. Oh yeah, I missed that when I was reading it. You know, like I'm just like not smart enough for some of those things. Yeah, I've realized now that it probably was like more of a 4-star. So yeah, I would definitely change that. Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This was a single dad romance, 5 stars, 100%, loved it. And you know what, it just keeps getting better with each book in this series. As much as I love The Right Move and it was like definitely one of my favorites, Caught Up is right up there with it. Like they're both hand in hand. Their relationship was so good, like the forced proximity of them living together, the forbidden aspect of her being like the coach's daughter but like not really, just like and also even the side characters, the coach in her, which was her dad, such an integral part of why I loved it, and also his son, I absolutely loved them. And just yeah, the side characters, it had that found family. You know I love found family, so still 5 stars. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, 100% 5 stars, still loved it. It's like a historical, magical perfection with tenderness and love and sweetness, and highly recommend this as much as it is a YA. I know it's a YA book, it might not be for everyone, but it's still incredible. Like the author did such an amazing job. Her writing is beautiful and I can't wait to read the second book, which comes out in January here in the UK. Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. If you love dragons and you love extremely good romantic banter, there's got that bit of like the enemies to lovers but not so much the hatred. It's more of like they've got a reluctant alliance that they have to have together, but they still know that they can't trust each other. You'll love this book. It is so good. I still think about this book and I just want everyone to read it. I know it's getting republished and the second book's not coming out till 2025. 2024 the author's actually rewriting the first book, so that will be published by the traditional publishing and then the second book will come out a year later. And I know perfection takes time and I'm gonna just have to accept it, but you guys need to read the first book because I need people to talk about it with. And finally, I actually was able to find a 5-star read for Another Hermione. It wasn't a million stars, but it was a 5-star read, so it is The Auction. You have to read the first book in that series because it is a 3-book series. The first book will make you appreciate The Auction so much more. I did skip the second book because I didn't really need I didn't need to read it, but you will appreciate The Auction so much more, just like the little pieces that you get given. It was the darkness that I needed, it was the messed up that I needed, it was the tension, it was the love story that I wanted from it. I just have this obsession with Hermione right now and I can't get over it. I'm sorry, I will shut up. I'm done. Anyway, those were all of my 5-star reads so far for 2023. I've only got a few more weeks left, but we will see if I have any more. I will let you know in my December wrap up. I'm just going to classify these as my 2023 favorite reads, and then those are all my DNFs. We don't really need to talk about them because the 5-star reads are what you need to take down. Please add them to your list, your TBRs, because I just need more people to speak about them with. Tell me down in the comments if you've read any of these books and if you've either DNF'd them or if you've loved them as well as much as I have for my 5 stars. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll see you in my next video.